to the show, Discover the Difference, brought to you by C3. I'm your host, Jayme Reid, alongside the ever-sexy Gabriel Erle. Today, we have on the show Nick Hardwick. Most of you recognize Nick Hardwick as the former team captain of the San Diego Chargers. What you might not have known about Nick that we dive into is his background. He didn't play football in high school, and it wasn't until college that he just walked on that the sport entered his life. He gets extremely vulnerable with us, and he speaks about just how traumatic it was to make the transition from being a professional athlete into post-football life. And I was just so blown away by his ability to open up for us. And finally, he finds his purpose in Lose Like a Lineman, where he's helping people across America get more fit and lose weight. And then ultimately, we learn maybe the most important thing of the podcast, which is who is a better athlete, him or his wife, Jayme. Enjoy our episode and learning more about Nick Hardwick. Nick, thanks for being here with us today. And you're an interesting guy. And when I was reading the brief that Phil put together on you, thinking back through all the things, it kind of took me down memory lane watching you after football jump from thing to thing to thing. And so obviously we all know you as a center for the San Diego Chargers, but many people may or may not know that you have beers in your name, that you've owned fitness facilities, that you've been calling games, a podcast guy, and now you have a Lose Like a Lineman lifestyle brand. And so there's going to be a lot for us to unpack here with you, but I kind of want to go back to what we were talking about before we started the podcast. You know, can you shine the light on who Nick Hardwick was kind of in Indiana as a kid growing up? What was your family like? What was Indiana like? Were you into sports or not? Just give us a little insight there.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me, guys. And I am a very interesting guy, and I have a lot of diverse background. I like to think of myself as very flexible and nimble and willing to change thought processes. So super open-minded. But Indianapolis, Indiana is where I grew up. Very stable home, mom and dad, Butch and Linda. I had an older brother, 15 months older than me. And we fought like absolute lion cubs for our entire youth. And dad was very tough on us. Dad's name is Butch. So if that gives you any indication of how I was raised just like he was named. So very hard, very tough, a lot of discipline. And, you know, looking back, I'm super thankful for the way that he did raise us. It was, I'm going to discipline you until you learn how to discipline yourself. And I would say if I have anything that has made my life what it is today, it's the discipline that he gave me that I have then carried into everything else. So Indianapolis, Indiana, I was a sports junkie as a kid, wanted to be a football player, baseball player, basketball player. And then all of a sudden I get to high school and I'm 5'4" and 125 pounds and thought, well, this football thing's not going to work out very well. I actually was on the freshman team and I don't think I got a snap. I like blocked that out of my memory because I thought that football was going to be my jam. But I think the coaches just honestly didn't trust that I wasn't going to get hurt if they put me on the field. So that memory is gone. And then I just kind of wrote off football. And I fell in love with the wrestling coach at our high school he's now a Hall of Fame wrestling coach, Roy Stecker, just an incredible man, overcame polio, had a wonderful family, treated his wife like a diamond. And he was just so good, but he was very tough on us. But one thing he did for me in my life was I think he believed in everybody that he coached more than they believed in themselves. And then eventually we bought into his belief in us that, hey, you can dream this massive dream and then we can figure out a way to go get that. And so the poem that he gave us was called It's All a State of Mind. And as a freshman, we had to memorize this really long poem. He gave it to us. We kept it in our card. We said it after every practice, before every meet. And I said it like as I was cutting. I cut 48 pounds my senior year to make weight. And I would every night laying in bed with a flannel sheet on top of a sleeping bag, wearing sweatshirts and a sauna suit, trying to cut weight. I would say that it's all a state of mind. If you think you're beating, you are. If you think it or not, you don't. Like, so there was this whole program and mantra, and it was basically like if you were to train to be a samurai or a ninja, Royce was giving us kind of that program. And so I ended up, my dream was to be a high school state champion. I didn't end up becoming a state champion. I ended up losing in the state finals to a kid who went on and wrestled at college and had a wonderful career. And I'm really thankful that I lost, because that competitive fire fueled even harder in me. And I ended up, didn't know what I was going to do after high school, but I knew I was like, I want to be famous. I want to do something amazing. And the most successful person in my family at that point was my dad's cousin, who was my second cousin. He was an Air Force pilot, and he also flew for FedEx. So he was like having tons of success. And I was like, sweet, I want to be a pilot. But I was like, I want to be even more badass than an Air Force pilot. I was like, I want to be a Navy pilot, like Top Gun. And then I got there, and I was like, well, these guys are even more hardcore. So I'm going to go be a Marine Corps pilot, because I didn't even know they flew jets. I was like, I'm going to fly F-18s. And that's kind of where we left off, guys, was you were talking about the room color. And I was like, I don't know what color my room is. It's like, it looks gray to me. And you're like green and blue. And I was like, I have no idea. I'm colorblind. And that changed my life, because I was on track, a Marine Corps ROTC scholarship at Purdue University. I wanted to be a pilot. And when I got my scholarship, they sent me off to Grisham Air Force Base to go get a physical. And one of the first things they do is give you a color vision test, that little, like all those dots in a circle, and pick out the number. It's like, I couldn't see shit. Like I was like, looks like dots to me. And they were like, no, there's a number in there. And I was like, not in here. There's not. And so I was colorblind, can't do it. And so I started I switched directions slightly, and it opened me up and opened my mind up to the possibilities that I could maybe start looking another direction. And then one of my friends came to me and said, hey, in the Purdue student exponent, he said, hey, Nick, they're having walk-on tryouts. And this was when Drew Brees was going off. It was Brees mania. Purdue won the Big Ten championship for the first time since like 1967, goes to the Rose Bowl. I was in the student section at the Rose Bowl, but as that year was going on, my friend comes to me, Frank Avino, Southside Chicago kid, and he's like, look at this, Purdue walk-on tryouts. You want to try? And I was like, well, I can't be a pilot. Sure, dude, I'll try. And so we got permission to go train. We started training for several months. I went to the Rose Bowl, watched the team lose to Washington. And the next month, basically, I tried out with 105 other dudes who wanted to be a part of this awesome team. And I happened to be one of 5 guys that made the team. And the football story is the rest of its history, I guess. It happened. It was crazy.
So, wow. So, Nick, you've had so much success. I just want to unpack that experience where, you wanted something so bad, and you decided that, you wanted to be like your cousin and be a pilot and be the best pilot. And then you were told you couldn't. What was that experience like to you, and how were you able to, just transition to something, totally different?
Yeah, thanks, Gabe, for bringing that up, because it was, I do gloss over it now because it really worked out well. But at the time, I was crushed. I mean, I remember driving back from, it was like Kokomo, Indiana, back to West Lafayette, where Purdue is, and it was probably an hour and a half drive. And I was like, what the hell am I going to do with my life now? Right? I was like, this was my dream. So I got crushed with my dream in wrestling. And then here comes this Marine Corps thing. And I'm like, sweet. They love me. They gave me a scholarship, man. This is working. And then it was like, whammo. It's like, sorry, buddy, you're colorblind. You're not going to fly here, and you're not going to fly commercially. So there was that dream. And it was, I'm not kidding, it was probably 2-4 weeks of a depression that was like, I have to figure things out. Like, I was unsettled. It felt like my world got rocked. And then I just kind of regrouped and was like, all right, what's the next best thing that I can do? The next most badass thing that I could do at that time, before I got asked to walk onto the football team, was to be a Marine Corps infantry officer. I was like, well, there's a super cool gunnery sergeant. His name's Duke Kilgore, probably still in the Marine Corps. And last I knew, he was out at 29 Palms, and he was just so hardcore and so cool. I was like, all right, I could get down with that. I'll be cool like that, dude. And because he's a leader of men, people respect him. And then my buddy came along with this opportunity. And of course, I didn't think I was really going to make the team, but I was going to entertain him. And it got me out of running 5 to 8 miles every morning at 6 a.m. with the Marine Corps. And these old heavy legs, they weren't exactly built for running long distance like that. And so I was training, I was lifting, and we were having a fun time doing it. Got permission from the major to go do it. And he's like, yeah, sure, fellas, just be sure you're actually training and not just getting out of our physical training sessions. And so it was a lot. To come back to the original question, it was a lot. I mean, it was a 2 to 4 week depression that I fought through and had to shift gears. And even then I had moments of pushback, like where we go on these field training exercises, and I was, they would break down your tent and they would ask you to build it up in 3 minutes. And I was not an outdoorsman at all. That's why I wanted to be a pilot. I was like, I'm not built for camping. And that's what Marines do, is like camp. So I remember like almost being toe to toe with Duke Kilgore, the gunny. And I was like, you're going to tear down my tent again? We're going to have a real freaking problem here, dude. he eventually called me aside and he's like, hey man, you got to get over this. This is just part of the process. They're going to do this to you when you go to officer candidate school. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to work out. I don't know how well it's going to play for me. I was like, can I put my hands on you and let's figure it out?
How much time went by between the time you were notified that you were colorblind and that path was going to change direction and when you walked on the football team?
Yeah. And, looking back, it's kind of a blur. It's like the timelines all get just jacked up looking back. So I don't really know. I just remember Frankie, and in my memory, it's like we're in the ROTC lounge and he was this heavier set kid at the time. I don't know what Frankie looks like now, but just such a nice, God, he was nice. And he played football in Chicago, and he came to me, and David Moore was our other friend, and Dave was hardcore, and he was on a state championship team in Indianapolis. And it must have been several months at least before he came to me with that kind of opportunity. So I couldn't really tell you the timeline. All I know is we requested permission, and then we started training separate, and we're running 40s and doing vertical jumps. And we had no idea what they were even going to ask us, at our little Purdue combine to do. But it was a funny deal because we showed up, and the day before our actual physical assessment, where they're getting height, weight, and they wanted to see your vertical and test you 40 and do all the combine drills, basically is what they were going to do. They call us up into the big conference room, and there's 100+ kids in there, and they give you a note card, and they're like, fill out your information. It's like name, height, weight, school, where'd you play, what are your accolades, what are your positions? And I was like, oh my God, I don't have a position. I obviously have 0 accolades. I don't even know what to write down, but I remember going through on the internet like the weeks leading up to this, and I was like, what position would I play? And I was like, I see myself. So I was 230. I was the same size I am now. I was like, I could see myself, I guess, being a D end or a linebacker. So I put DN/linebacker. And when I happened to make the team, and I tell you, I think I made the team, honestly, because I had a Marine Corps high and tight, so super hardcore, super militant, and I wore my Marine Corps PT gear. So I had my shirt on that had the Purdue University ROTC. I had real short shorts that were super tight, and I looked way different than every other boy that showed up on that tryout. And I in their heads, the way I would frame it now, looking back, if I were a coach looking at me doing all this, I'm like, yeah, he's fine. I mean, he moves. He's like got a decent frame on him. Sure, we could maybe make something out of him. I don't think they thought much, but I think what they maybe thought was, if this dude's willing to go die as a Marine, what's he willing to do for us as a football team? Like he's probably willing to throw that body around and be the old proverbial tackling dummy. And they were right. That's exactly what I was for a year.
Did you ever ask him that?
No, I should. And actually, one of the coaches is now back at Purdue, which is only an hour from me now. And he still owes me a dinner from my performance in spring ball, my second spring ball. And he'd never cashed in on that because coaches move like the wind blows. So he ended up going on somewhere else, but he still owes me a dinner. And we're
going to send him the recording so that you can cash in on your dinner. So I I had a question. So at what point, you're this kid that never played really football in high school, you show up, you make the team. At what point after playing at Purdue that you said, hey, I'm going to, play at the highest level. I'm going to go to the NFL. Was that something that you thought about at Purdue?
Not immediately. I mean, when I walked on, my whole ambition was to wear the costume and stand on the sidelines and act like everybody in the stands was cheering for me, because I was frankly just sick of cheering for other grown men. I was like, this is cool, this is fun, but not really my favorite thing to be a fan. I at least want to get down there and I could, in my own head, like just make believe that they're cheering for me. And then when I got on the sideline, it was like, all right, how do I get on the field? I'll be on the wedge, I'll be on the kickoff return team. Maybe I could make the punt team. Like, I don't know, somewhere they could use a body and maybe I could be that body. But eventually I ended up getting pretty good pretty quickly. And I had worked myself into the position to be like the starting / immediate backup defensive tackle, because that was the position they threw me in. So I was 230, went to my first spring ball, and the coach, very first day, Brock Spack is his name, he grabbed me by the arm and he's like, son, who told you were a linebacker? And I was like, Coach, nobody told me anything. Like, I'm just here because these are the guys that you had me running with during the 6 a.m. workouts after I made the team. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And he goes, good, you're not in this room. And he grabbed me and he walks me past the defensive end room, which is where I thought I was going. And he sat me in the defensive tackle room. And he's like, these are your new best friends. And I look around and I was like, Jesus, some of these guys are 100 pounds heavier than me. So I look at Matt Mitrione and I'm like, dude, what'd you do to gain all the weight? And he's like, well, on top of everything else, I would eat 2 Jimmy John gargantuan subs a day. So on top of the Jimmy John gargantuan subs a day that I now was consuming, I would also have 2 pounds of ground beef a day. I would make a 700 calorie EAS Myoplex shake at least twice a day. And once I would have sitting on my nightstand, set an alarm at 2 a.m, wake up, have my shake, pound it, go back to bed. And so I ended up gaining like 50 pounds in a hurry. Well, I was set to be, I told you, like the number 2, number 3 defensive tackle. Well, the second day of training camp, they came to me and said, Nick, you're moving to guard tomorrow. And I was like, no, I'm not. I am getting ready to play defensive tackle. There's no way you're moving me. Like, all I want to do is play. Right. So don't take that opportunity from me. And they're like, no, you don't understand. You're going to start tomorrow. The first day of training camp, you're going to start. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what left or right is. I don't know what a run is. I don't know what a pass is. Like, Nick, you got 2 seniors next to you. They'll tell you what to do on every play. You're going to be fine. I was like, all right, well, sign me up. I'm starting. And I had no idea what I was doing, but the most difficult thing that an offensive lineman can do is pass protect. And I know to people out there watching the game, it looks like a bunch of fat guys belly bumping. And it's like, there's nothing technical about that. Pass protection is one of the most technical things. And I've played all kinds of sports. It is wildly, wildly technical, like to the point where I got to the league and cornerbacks are coming to learn how to pass protect so they can learn how to stop guys at the line of scrimmage. It's just so technical, so many little details that really the common fan would never be able to comprehend. But day one, I'm obviously the starter now, which is hilarious. And I'm going against a 330-pound guy. Damian Greer was his name, from Connecticut. And I was like, well, let's see how this goes. This will be interesting. And you think like, all right, I'm going to stay in good position. This guy's going to flat back me, because you just like physically you think, I don't understand how this pass protection thing works. Like, how do they stay on their feet? And all of a sudden I stoned this dude at the line of scrimmage. It was just like, boom. And I rocked him and we just stood right there and he stopped. And I was like, holy crap, it worked. I was like, and the defensive side, because those were all my buddies, because I'd been with them for a year, they went crazy. The new O-line friends went crazy. And I was like, all right, I can do this. This is going to work for me. And then, so I played that year at guard until the very last game of the regular season, when our center ended up tearing his ACL when he got landed on by who became my left guard in San Diego, Chris Dealman. So we're playing Indiana University. Chris was a defensive tackle. He landed on Gene Murchkowski's leg, tore his ACL, and in 2 weeks they said, Nick, you're going to be the starting center for the bowl game, and you're going to go against Tank Johnson, University of Washington. And he was an All-American, I think. He was a phenomenal player. He got drafted by the Bears, I think, in the 3rd round. And it was like, okay, I don't know how to snap. I still didn't know anything. I didn't know the calls. I didn't know. So in 2 weeks' time, I had to ramp up real quick. I had to learn all the pass protection, learn how to snap, learn how to block, learn how to move all at the same time. And in that game against University of Washington, I think aside from like one snap where I dribbled it back to the quarterback, I had a great game. And I was like neck and neck with Terry in this game, Tank. And right then I was like, this is it. I found my jam. Like I am definitely good enough to be a professional athlete. And it was just like the greatest feeling walking away from that game. We had beat University of Washington, who, to complete the circle, it's crazy. When I went to watch Drew Brees in the Rose Bowl, they lost to University of Washington 34-24. I got to look back at the score. I think we beat the University of Washington in my first start at center 34-24 at the Sun Bowl. I got to go back and check that out for sure. And crazier full circle, Gene Murchkowski, the center who tore his ACL, his brother ended up being my backup in San Diego, Scott Murchkowski. Scott, I got hurt week 1 of 2009 in Oakland on Monday Night Football. And Scott took my spot, was doing an unbelievable job. We ended up being 13-3 that year. And the game that I was finally ready to come back, which was week 16, so we had that game and one other left, Scott ended up getting hurt. And so I got my spot back, which is just like total weird full circle. And to even make it more serendipitous, because I just think the universe is so crazy, I get drafted to San Diego with the 3rd pick of the 3rd round, where Drew Brees is the quarterback. So you want to talk about like the universe just aligning for me, it felt like. I mean, it was perfect.
Do you also credit Dealman for your spot at center?
I should credit him. Yeah. I give Dealman tons of credit anyway for the success of my career, because I think you're only as good as the people that are around you and that push you and that protect you and make you look better. So
talk to us about the Chargers a little bit more. Did Drew Brees play a role in the Chargers drafting you?
I don't know why they drafted me, because I talked to the coach, Hudson Houck, my offensive line coach, who I ended up naming my first son after Hudson, because I thought the name was cool, not because anything else. I was just like, when I heard that name Hudson Houck, I was like, Hudson Hawk was Bruce Willis, right? And I was like, Hudson Houck, wow, that's badass. And I was like, okay, I've never heard the name Hudson. And then all of a sudden you name your kid something, and then everybody else's kid is the exact same name. But Drew didn't have any role in it. But Hudson, after the season, goes, hey, look, man, I didn't want to draft you. You weren't the pick that I wanted, but I'm sure glad we got you. So I don't know actually why they picked me, because I had like 15 games under my college belt. I was the 2nd center taken off the board that year. I was the first of 9 Boilermakers drafted. So I guess they saw a lot of upside, and maybe some crazy kid who was wild enough to think that he belonged on a Big Ten championship team and could just walk on and do whatever the hell he wanted. Maybe they just saw some sort of brashness and they were like, maybe we could build off of that. So I don't really know why they drafted me, but I do know I was sitting in the cafeteria in one of the really early days in my career there. It was like one of the first 2 or 3 days, sitting in the cafeteria, having my lunch, keeping my head down like a good rookie. And all of a sudden, I feel a pat on my back, and the guy goes, hey, Boiler. And I knew the voice because I had seen him on TV. I had heard him on the radio. And I was like, Drew fucking Brees. I was like, oh my God, inside, right? I'm like, oh my God, it's Drew Brees. Like, this is amazing. Drew Brees is like, he goes, you mind if I sit down and have lunch with you? And I'm like, oh, he wants to have lunch with me. I was like, this is Make-A-Wish stuff, right? It's like, holy cow, this is amazing. And externally, of course, I'm playing it cool. I'm like, oh yeah, hey Drew, sit on down, man. Love to have lunch with you. And it's like because he was, I mean, I'm not kidding, at that his senior year at Purdue when they were winning, like beat Ohio State at home, beat Michigan at home, beat Penn State at home, it was crazy. It was crazy. People were setting couches on fire in the middle of campus. Like there was riots. The field, they were trying to tear down the goalpost, but Purdue engineers are too good. They engineered it so it wouldn't come down. I mean, but so when I got the chance to snap to Drew for 2 years. I mean, you want to talk about a dream come true. That was awesome.
What was it like when the Chargers let go of Drew, who you built this relationship with, and you're going to start this process over with somebody that is new to you and the experience that you are so excited about?
Yeah, it's so Philip, I got drafted with Phil, right? So he came in 2004 with me, and we had built a really good relationship. Just kind of, Drew had already been there for 3 years. He had established himself as a pro, although they weren't having a lot of success. And San Diego was, you get painted a certain way, especially early in your career. It's like, I don't know if he's got that. So hindsight, it's easy to look back, I think, for a lot of San Diegans, especially, and see Drew go on and do amazing things in New Orleans. But people forgot his arm got like almost ripped off at the end of the 2005 season. And I just found this out a little bit ago, was that the coaching staff actually went to AJ Smith, the GM at the time, and they said, hey, we believe Drew's going to come back and he's going to be just fine. And we want him to be the quarterback of the team. So if you could offer him a deal, that'd be great. So the coaching staff all thought that Drew was going to come back and they were going to trade Philip somewhere who hadn't played it all yet. And apparently they didn't offer him enough money. New Orleans offered him more money. And the rest on that side is history. But Philip was awesome. Like Philip was just in the locker room as a guy and being relatable and genuine. I mean, he's my best buddy. He's my best friend. And I talk to him all the time still to this day. And I think the one unique thing about him is his care for the game, for one, for his family and his religion, but everybody around him, his level of care is just unmatched. I mean, it's always been about more than Philip and serving his needs. It's just about everybody else. So it was really easy to get behind the move at the time. And I know some of the older veterans were probably like, what the heck's going on? But for me, I'm like, cool, this is my boy. It's like, let's do this. And we did. We ended up being 14-2 that year, we had home field advantage, the bye, and San Diegans remember we ended up losing to New England, who was turns out to be a pretty good dynasty in the 2000s.
So what then? Philip goes to Indianapolis. What do you think of that coming back to your town?
I was super pumped for him. Yeah, I was really happy that he got the chance to go out on a high note, right? Because he had been kind of, imagine this. People don't think about this. Okay, quarterback of the Los Angeles Chargers, but for the last 2 years in San Diego, people didn't care. They wanted him out of there. They had already announced that they're leaving or that they wanted to leave. And they're like, hey, we're going to give it one more try, where they were going to get into bed with the Raiders and go to Carson. So people in San Diego were over it. They're just done. So 2014, 2015, he still didn't have a home field advantage. He never had a home field advantage in Los Angeles. So for the final 5 years of his deal with the Chargers, he never had a home field advantage, not one time. And, in the middle of a massive transition, a move north with no fans, I can't imagine being the quarterback of that franchise and trying to hold that act together. Like how much of a challenge. He never complained about it. He never griped. He never expressed any frustration. He kept his head down and he went to work. But when he finally got to Indianapolis and got to experience something else, I mean, it was cool, but then it was unfortunate because it was COVID. And so he didn't even really get to experience the home field advantage here. I think they got up to like 13,000 or something like that, but not 75,000. But I think getting to see another organization and how they run and operate at a different level, perhaps, and a different compete, I think that was, I think that meant a lot to him.
Something I've always wanted to ask you, toward the end of your career, you signed that last contract with the Chargers, and I know you had some options that were coming in there, and some of them might have meant more money, but you're relocating to a different community. Why did you make the decision to stay in this community that you spent your whole career in at the time that those contract offers are sitting on the table?
Yeah, I thought it was super special I always wanted to be a one team guy. It was old school. And I just kind of fashioned myself as a player as old school. And I know it was uncommon then to play for one team only. It's even more uncommon now to have played your entire long career with one franchise. So for me, that was super meaningful. And being a one team guy meant more to me than going and making $1 million more. Like that wasn't my career and my legacy. Being able to go played 11 years and spent 5 years as the captain of the Chargers, that meant way more than any more money than I could have received on the other end. And I wasn't positive that the other deals were going to be worth more, right? So Tennessee was available. My agent was also Matt Hasselbeck's agent, and he was the quarterback of the Titans at the time. So we were talking there. That was certainly an option, but the Chargers offered me a good, fair deal, I thought, about 2 hours before free agency officially kicked off, and we could go fish for other offers without being in violation of league rules. So when they said that, and they bumped up the offer by like a 1.5, I mean, they bumped it up by 50% in the last 2 hours. Like, all right, take the deal. Let's go. We're good. I'll play for that.
And then, so let's to transition a little bit. I remember having dinner with you one time before you were retired, and asking you about your identity, and have you visualized what it's going to be like to not be a football player and to be something else? And at the time, I think you had told me, I didn't grow up playing football my entire life. Being a pro football player isn't my identity, and I'll make the transition fine. So that's how I kind of received it. Now that you're on the back end of it, can you walk us back through it? And is that how did I categorize it right? And is that how you feel about it in hindsight?
No, and I didn't know this, so I wasn't blowing smoke, but that was full of shit. And I had no idea. I mean, I honestly had no idea, because I knew the dangers of transition. I knew how difficult it was. I was the team representative for the union for 9 out of my 11 seasons there. And I had heard the horror stories, and I knew that identity was a major issue when transitioning out of professional sports. And so for me, I always viewed myself as Nick Hardwick, who played football, not Nick Hardwick, the football player. And it may sound subtle, but it's a massive difference. However, I do believe, and you guys are highly successful men, I do believe that to be successful at anything, you have to embody it. There's no dipping your toes in and finding success. You got to cannonball into that MFR, man. You got to go for it. And that's the only way that and maybe you can do it different. I haven't found any success just being gentle into something. Like it's a full send or no send. And it was obviously, I learned this after I transitioned out. It was a full send. I was full commit. I was a football player, and it was looking back, it was easy to be a football player. It was hard, physically hard, challenging, a lot of discipline, all that. But the decision-making corridor was super easy. It was, is this going to help me be a better football player, better teammate, take us closer to a championship? Yes, it is. All right, I'll do that. Or no, it's not. No, I'm not going to do that then. That was easy, right? And then your career ends, and all of a sudden, like, you've got a lot of time. You're young. You've got a lot of energy. You've got a lot of money. And the possibilities are endless. So the way it's been described to me, and I thought this was brilliant. It was actually a real estate agent in San Diego. His name's Mark Prestera. He's like, your football career was like a long, narrow corridor. You got to make decisions, and you would bounce back and forth between the walls. Like, yeah, sure, I'll go over here. Yeah, sure, I'll go over here. But you were always walking towards the light at the end of the tunnel. And then all of a sudden, the tunnel stops and you're in the middle of a vast field. And now I can go any way I want. And I've got endless time to be able to meander around here. And you're lost. I was lost. I was confused. I was depressed. I thought I had done everything right. I had retired kind of on my own terms. I was going to retire after the year anyway. And of course, everybody wants to go out like John Elway or Peyton Manning and win the Super Bowl and hold the trophy and kiss the babies and do all that cool shit, but nobody gets to. Like there's so very few guys actually get to do that. But I had a career. I announced it at my retirement. I was going to be a disc jockey on the local radio station. And I did for like 2 months and things were going so well. And then there's this weird thing, like physiologically, I knew at about April, it was time to start fighting again. Like my body knew it was time to start fighting again. Yet I wasn't in the locker room. I didn't have my friends that I had to show up to every day. I wasn't lifting heavy weights like I once was. I wasn't fighting other grown men every day for 3 hours. And I wasn't around a bunch of alpha males. So I was an absolute mess. And I didn't know who I was. And honestly, I was at the radio station for 3 hours a day, spinning classic rock from 3 to 6 p.m. on 101.5 KGB. And it was, for a moment it was awesome. And I thought it was going to be sweet, but dude, there's in the real world. And here's what I ran into was the pace of life in the real world compared to the National Football League is like geared down to first gear from I was in like 10th. I was running on a turbocharged, like, wow. It's like, you got to go, you got to compete, you got to train, you got to do everything right. Otherwise, Vince Wilfork's going to run your ass over. Well, in the real world, it's like I'm talking on the radio, a taped segment for 3 minutes out of 60 every hour. Like, what are we going to do? There's no urgency here. So I lost urgency. I lost passion. I lost purpose. I didn't have an identity. I was like, hey, you're a classic rock guy. I was like, cool if that's your gig, but it wasn't my gig, man. And so I got super depressed for a little while. And then the radio station called back after I had quit at the classic rock channel. And they're like, hey, we know you weren't into that, but maybe you're into this. And it was the field reporter job. And then they're like, and if it's not too much, would you want your own sports talk radio show in the morning? And I was like, all right, now this is something I can maybe get down with. We're actually talking for 45 out of 60 minutes every hour. And we take a 15-minute break, and that may work. And it did. And it was a really nice, soft landing. And then from there, I really figured out how to communicate effectively. I learned how to run my own show, which is awesome. It's helped with the podcast. But I also figured out what I like doing and what I like talking about. And mostly I like talking about health and wellness. And I like learning about the body and talking about relationships and psychology and willpower and resilience and grit and talking to really interesting people. So then I transitioned from being the color analyst of the Chargers. They moved to Los Angeles, or I probably would have done that I still would have been doing that. Probably would have done that till I was 80 years old, right? But life changes directions, and you got to be willing to change directions with it. And I was just unwilling to move to LA at the time. And so shifted health and wellness. And that's the space we're at now. And it's been awesome. It's been super fun. And we've had a lot of success with it. And our weight loss program's growing. It's been great.
Yeah. You've had amazing success personally. I got, I think everybody kind of watched you, lose 100 pounds and, just very, it's not something that is easy to do. But that seems like that's kind of transitioned you into, helping other people, become more fit and feel better and this whole wellness track. I know we're going to move over here quick to rapid fire, but maybe just give us, the 1 minute on what you're doing now.
Yeah. So it's super cool. I wrote this ebook program series. There's actually 5 ebooks. It's called Lose Like a Lineman. We're actually getting ready to launch Lose Like a Lady, which is geared more towards females, because when I wrote this Lose Like a Lineman, I kept having women write me and I'm like, you can do it. It's not really geared for you. So now we've got coming out in the next day or two, we got Lose Like a Lady. geared specifically towards women and their preferences and what really works with the female body. And the men we've had, and I didn't really intend for this to turn into a business, but I gave it to some Naval Academy guys years ago. And I just gave them the program. And basically, they all lost 70 to 80 pounds in 4 months. And it worked for them. It was just crazy. They followed it to a T. They're really disciplined. And I was like, yeah, they're a little special. They're academy guys. I was a pro athlete, little special. And then people kept writing and wanting to know what's going on. What's the program? Can you give it to me? And I was writing like in the DMs. I'm like basically giving them the program. I'm like, try this, do that. And it was like, I frankly got sick of writing emails and DMs, and it just, quarantine happened and I had a lot of time and a lot of space and a lot of energy. And I was like, screw this. I'm going to write this book. And I put it into a Google Doc. And my intention was at first just to sell it, like not sell it, but just email it to people. So one guy wrote and I was like, hey, John Zinser, try this out. And he wrote me in July. And so in July, he got the program. I said, I want you to do me a favor, write everything down, track what you're doing, and every week keep me updated on how your progress is. Well, like 30 days in, he had lost 30 pounds. I was like, holy crap, this is working. Like, this isn't a fluke. Guy's 53 years old. He was 6'3", 325. And over the course of the next 7 months, John lost 100 pounds. And he's still a member. He's still really active with this network that we created, that everybody gets to hold each other accountable. And so I brought on, like, after John had his first month of success, I was like, anybody else want this? And I gave it to 5 other dudes. And then I was like, and we're going to have a Zoom call every weekend and we're going to talk to each other. And I'm going to take you through some programs. And we did that. And they all lost like 30 pounds really quickly. And then I was like, well, crap, this may be something. I'll turn it into an ebook and let me see how it goes. Turned it into an ebook. And like the first weekend, it was like 80 people bought the plan and people were having crazy success. And I was like, oh, we got to get legit now. I was like, damn it. I was like, this wasn't really supposed to be the plan. Well, here's what we're doing. It was like, give the people what they want. And so it's been unbelievable. Like, it's been so awesome and so fun for me. And I did a podcast with Brian Buffini, and Buffini's so incredible. He just sees who you are. If you guys don't know Brian Buffini, you got to look up Brian. He's in Carlsbad. He's a real estate guru. He's unbelievable. He's successful, but he like reads people super well. And he goes, Nick, your job was never to win the championship at the state wrestling level in the NFL. That's not your job. He's like, your job is to hold other people's hand up on stage and be really proud of them. And that's where I feel like I'm at now. And once he told me that, and he's like, now you got to turn this into a program. He's like, make it a system. And it's like, all right. And so a lot of credit goes to Brian Buffini and Kevin Buffini, his brother, and that crew for really helping turn this thing into something that can actually create, help people reclaim their lives. And that's what's been so fun about it.
Yeah, I saw that. It seems like you add humor to it too, because I know when you go on your website and you sign up for the program, it says, if you click away, it says, well, you can do this or you can eat some pizza.
Eat pizza. And by the way, I tell everybody this. There's no bad foods. Like, people have demonized everything. Oh, can you have carbs on the diet? Oh, is it a keto diet? It's like, it's whatever the hell you want it to be. It's the nutritional structure created for a caloric deficit, which is the only rule, by the way, of losing weight. If you can create a caloric deficit, meaning you burn more calories than you take in, then you will lose weight. And if you stay within the framework of this structure and you're a big man, you're going to lose it in a hurry. Now, the women lose it slower because they're smaller, more likely, but they're still losing weight. Like Jayme, my wife, has lost 6 pounds in a week. So it's still happening, or 5 pounds in a week.
If there are entrepreneurs who are listening and they're at that moment in their life where they're like, I think I found my purpose, and they don't have an opportunity to interact like with somebody you did, how do they take that vision of their purpose and do what you did and turn it into their life and their business?
I think for me, what happened was, I felt compelled, right? There was a compulsion to it. It was like, I have to get this information out. It's been sitting with me for way too long. I need to get this out of me. And so I wrote the book, and it was like 120 something pages. And it's like, that felt better. And then when I gave it to somebody and I was like, that worked. It was an N of 1, right? It was a small sample size. Then I was like, let's take it to an N of 5 and let's see what happens there. And it was like, oh, that worked for all of them too. Cool. And then as I was going through that process, I was asking questions like, what works for you? What doesn't work for you? What needs to be cleared up? And so they were giving me unbelievable feedback. So for all those guys, I'm super thankful. And then it was just a feeling that I knew it worked. I had seen it work, and I knew that I could get it to work for other people. And then it was just a matter of finding somebody to help me turn this vision that I had into something. And then it's constantly, as I'm learning, you can't stay put, right? It's like the ebooks, like those aren't going to last forever. Eventually our customers are going to go, that's cool. We need more out of you now. That's cool. What else are you doing? So now we got a fitness program coming, and we're going to have online videos with me and my wife, Jayme, and we're going to do all those. And it's like, okay. And then eventually it goes, that's cool. What else? Right. And so you have to stay sharp. You have to keep evolving and finding people that can help create your vision. And frankly, I found a lot of them on Upwork.com. So if there's entrepreneurs out there who need design work, who need email funnel systems created, who need Google and Facebook ads, like Upwork.
We echo that. We use the heck out of Upwork, and we say the same thing to people. So let's move into rapid fire. Rapid fire, as close to one word answers as you can. Who's a better athlete, you or your wife, Jayme?
She is now.
I'm most passionate about my work because
it's who I am.
What are you drinking with a steak dinner?
Soda water with a lime.
Broadcast booth or sideline reporting?
Broadcast booth.
My favorite book is?
Range by David Epstein.
If I didn't play football, I would have done this.
Marine Corps infantry officer.
Only because you couldn't be a pilot.
Exactly. Second best, man. That's my role in life. Second best.
You have to have contingency plans, right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, last one. 2021 is going to be, for Nick, is going to be the year of?
Growth.
Awesome, man.
So one last question before we close this out is, when you look back at, what your legacy and what you want to, tell your, teach your kids, what would you say, what would you say to them?
Our family motto is, I'm not as good today as I will be tomorrow. And it plans for failure today, but it also plans on deep reflection and understanding where you can improve and planning on growth moving forward every single day until the day that I die.
Our podcast is all about, the discovery and being different. And you talked about it when you wore your ROTC uniform. You've never conformed to norms. You are somebody who commands attention, if you will, because you do have a different presence about you. What is that? Where's that come from that makes Nick Hardwick unique and different?
I don't know. I'm just unconventional. I'm curious. I'm very open-minded. I like to think of myself as mentally flexible and quite nimble, and I'm willing to listen and keep in mind that I'm still growing and learning and changing, and I am willing at a moment's notice to put down every thought and belief system that I once had and say that was incorrect. I'm going to adjust it, and we're going to move from there.
And I've seen you do some pretty flexible stretching out. You've said flexible a few times, and I just have visions of you on the floor in your yoga moves. So you're one flexible big guy.
Thank you. Hey guys, I appreciate it.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nick. Great to see you.